Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, where we recap the news of the week and Major League Baseball. As always, I'm Jeremiah.
And I'm Ben.
And we have some very sad news in baseball this week, especially on Sunday morning. Jose Fernandez, Miami Marlins pitcher, passed away early Sunday morning due to a boating accident. He was only 24 years old, and this was when I woke up and got the notification on ESPN, and I thought that I was kind of dreaming a little bit because I couldn't believe it. But then I realized, man, Jose Fernandez is actually gone, and I think the reason why I kind of took it a little hard, and I don't know Jose Fernandez personally at all, I think it was because he is practically the same age as I am. Like, I'm 24 years old. He's 24 years old, and losing your life at a young age is just like when you think about things like this, it is tough to bring it all in. Because, when you see an athlete that lives their life a different way than you do, it's still tough to see because he's so young,
Yeah, it was definitely one of those moments. I think you kind of put it best when I woke up and saw. It was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
He dies in a boating accident, goes out past midnight. I guess the boat kind of hit like some rocks underneath or anything, capsized, turned over, and died from trauma. So definitely not like a drowning incident. Probably, took like a pretty hard hit on a boat. They don't really have seatbelts or anything. A couple other people in the boat as well. So it's not just Fernandez here that died, but there's also other people involved. But like you said, it was one of those moments I just looked at my phone and I was like, wait, this can't be true. Like, for a guy who, 24 years old, as you mentioned, such a young age, really just starting his career. I realized this was his fourth year in the major leagues. Battled a couple of injuries the last few years. Then think about his rookie year. He won the Rookie of the Year award, multiple All-Star appearances, dominant strikeout pitcher, really the leader of the Marlins organization, at least on the pitching side. I realize you do have Giancarlo Stanton as far as positional players, but for the pitching side, he was definitely the ace of their staff, one of the best pitchers in the game, so young. I feel like he was really on his way to he's already a good, solid pitcher, but just really stardom. And now just to have his life cut short like that is definitely very depressing.
Yeah, and he was on his way to maybe winning a Cy Young Award. His stats this year were just incredible, and especially in a year after Tommy John surgery. And the other two people that were on the boat with Fernandez were Eddie Rivero and Emilio Macias. They were also, they also were killed in that accident. A thing that really struck me this morning, that is, I read this article on USA Today, and Fernandez actually did ask a couple of his Marlins teammates to join him on the late night trip on the water. A couple of them turned him down, so that's why these other two people went. That is Rivero and Macias. And Marcell Ozuna, the outfielder for the Marlins, told the Miami Herald, quote, "That night I told him they'll go out. Everybody knew he was crazy about that boat and loved being out on the water. I told him I couldn't go out that night because I had the kids and my wife waiting for me." And it just really struck me because imagine if these other Marlins players joined him too. It would have been a lot worse. I'm not saying it's not worse right now, but I'm saying could it be even more worse for the Miami's organization, maybe even baseball, and for the families that are involved in this organization as well.
Yeah, Ozuna was one of them that got invited by Hernandez to go on the boat. Obviously, he said no, and then we saw what happened. But you mentioned about the families. Jose Fernandez put on Instagram just a while back that, expecting the birth of a child with his girlfriend. So you have a baby going to be born without seeing his father ever. So that's definitely something that's going to be hard to deal with, hard to cope with. You have the Miami Marlins as an organization having to sort of deal with the loss of a player during the season, which has got to be extremely tough. Here at the end of the season, I realize they're still in contention for a playoff berth. If like the Giants or Mets or Cardinals do win a game, then they will be eliminated, or if they even lose. So their magic number to get eliminated is 1, but it's technically still in contention, kind of having to deal with the side, the side communication, the side discussion here about everything with Fernandez, what they want to do. He was scheduled to pitch on Monday. Just a day before his scheduled start, you have to sort of deal with this bomb dropped on your office and your organization. It's definitely really tough. With all that being said, I think the Marlins are handling this extremely well. You think about what they did on Sunday. They canceled their game, so they didn't even play their game. On Monday, they had every single player wear Fernandez's jersey, number 16, with his name on the back. So to honor him, the Marlins are going to retire the number 16, which was Jose Fernandez's number. You have the emotional home run by D. Gordon leading off the game there in the bottom half of the first inning, rounding first base, and he just really emotional, really crying. Like when I watched that, I got chills just watching it. So I think the Marlins as a whole are handling this extremely well.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you on this, Ben. They handle this so much better than I think many people around Major League Baseball and all sports thought they would, because when you lose one of your young players to a tragic death like that, it is tough to grasp, especially if he's one of your best players. And I'm not saying it wouldn't matter if he was their best player or not. I'm just saying it is tough to fathom when one of your players on your organization died all of a sudden at a young age. And getting back to that game on Monday, I think everyone in baseball and all sports were rooting for the Marlins that night. I know the Mets, and that was an important game for the Mets too. They're in a playoff contention right now, and that was a very important game for them. But I think everyone was rooting for the Marlins, even the Mets fans, for that matter, were rooting for the Marlins to win that night. And how could you not? How could you not root for the Marlins to win that game? And watching that D. Gordon leadoff home run, that was very emotional. I actually got a little emotional watching it, especially when D. Gordon was hugged simultaneously about his teammates in the dugout. And the thing that I really loved about that game was the end when the whole team got around the circle around the mound, which had Jose Fernandez's number 16 on it, painted on it. They got around it. Giancarlo Stanton said a little prayer, and they left their hats onto the mounds. And I just think that whole game was probably moment of the year in sports. And you can't beat that. This is the reason why you love sports. You can't script this stuff up. And and I still can't believe it that this happened. But like you said, it has been handled really well by the Miami Marlins organization, and it's going to be tough to move on from this. But they're going about it the right way, and I wish nothing but the best for Miami Marlins organization and the family of Jose Fernandez, and that's all I can really say.
Yeah, even Noah Syndergaard, who pitched last night for the Mets, he's sort of an outspoken guy, a guy who's not afraid to sort of spark up a joke or anything. Even he put on Twitter last night how it kind of gave him chills just to pitch on, he called it Jose's mound, just to pitch there, and kind of thankful and grateful for everything, and kind of made him take a step back in a way. So even other players around the league, David Ortiz has been really emotional about it. A lot of these Cuban guys, and especially guys from the Latin America, Dominican Republic area, have a close sort of relationship with Fernandez, and it's got to affect everybody, not just Miami, not just his family, not just the organization. So it's definitely something that's unfortunate. You look at Jose Fernandez, how he even got to baseball, trying to escape from Cuba, got stopped doing it 3 times, finally gets through on the 4th time. His mother falls in the water, starts drowning at 15 years old. He jumps in there and saves her life and gets her out in pitch black darkness as he's trying to get back into the States. Becomes a U.S. citizen last year. So overcome a lot of adversity in his life, not just through baseball. And now for it to be cut short like this is definitely something really, really just kind of takes you back for a second and makes you think like, wow, man, like these things. Unfortunately, it's part of the game, part of life. But anything can happen, and kind of just got to take things and think about things a little differently, you know.
Yeah, and the thing that you said about Fernandez defecting from Cuba, yeah, he failed 3 times, and the 4th time he finally happened. And that story about his mom drowning in the water, and Fernandez got to save him. And I think you guys say good things about Fernandez as a human being. There's not one good thing, not one bad thing that a lot of players said about him. He was just a very good human being, caring person. Like I said, I don't know him personally, but this is just what I read from a lot of sources. And there's also a thing that kind of got me a little bit. When this news broke, ESPN did break the news on SportsCenter. Hannah Storm, I remember she was reporting the news, and Eduardo Perez, who is one of the analysts on Baseball Tonight on the network, he got very emotional, and that kind of got me a little bit, you know, because I don't even know Fernandez, but the fact that, man, all these people were saying real good things about him, like I felt like I kind of know him in a way, you know?
Yeah, you can kind of relate back to people. So as far as Fernandez goes, as I mentioned, multiple All-Star appearances. He had 2. He also won the Rookie of the Year. So in 76 career starts, Fernandez will, you know, it's kind of sad to say this, but will unfortunately finish his career with 38 wins, 17 losses, ERA of 2.58, a strikeout per 9 innings ratio of 11.2, and in total 589 strikeouts. So definitely a great start of his career. I'd say if he could have stayed healthy, that was sort of the one knock on Fernandez's career, is that he had trouble staying healthy those couple of years there. If he could have stayed healthy, you know, you could have been looking at him maybe even as a Hall of Famer, you know, still so young, 24 years old, still had a good 10, maybe 15 years of pitching solid. So, I mean, it's just really sad.
Yeah, it's really sad, and my heart goes out to Fernandez family and the Rivero and Macias family as well. The other 2 guys, they're 2 people that were killed in that accident, because we can't forget about those guys as well.
No, absolutely not. Everything you said put it best. Like, you know, condolences and everything goes out to family, friends, Miami organization, anybody related. So it's definitely a really sad day. So
yeah, and but we're gonna have to take our first break. We're gonna get into some news here regarding playoff races, and it's getting down very close and tight. Playoffs are literally a week ahead. So we'll be back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And we are back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, and we're moving on to some good news now. We're putting that behind us and moving on. Going to be a little more energetic, a little more happy now.
Yeah. We have to. We're going to put more energy into the show now after the unfortunate news about Fernandez, which rightfully so. We had to, say that was a little somber.
Had to talk about it.
Yeah,
so.
But we're moving on.
That's right.
To wild card races, guys. It's getting down to the nitty gritty.
That's true. We don't really have any close division races. It seems like every year going down to the wire, you have at least 1 or 2 divisions where teams are maybe separated by a game or 2. But the smallest division race is 5 games, and we're just under 5 games left. So most teams have at least already clinched their division or maybe have a magic number of 1. So we don't really have any division races to talk about, but we can't not talk about the wild card races. In the NL, it's a little more tighter, but in the AL, we still have 3-4 teams, maybe even 5 if you count in the Houston Astros, that are still battling in that American League for the 2 wildcard spots.
Yeah, and but I kind of want to talk the National League first because
have to.
We kind of have to. This is a very tight race. 3 teams are only separated by 1 game. It's the closest race right now in the playoffs. The New York Mets, they did lose that game on Monday to the Marlins, which we previously talked about the whole Fernandez segment, which I thought they were going to lose that game. Everyone was kind of rooting for the Marlins at that point. And it was an important game, but I don't think that night it really mattered. But anyways, moving on from the other nights, they did win last night in dominant fashion.
Yeah, every team, so the Mets, the Cardinals, and the Giants, who were battling for the NL wild card, they all won last night. And what I found ironic is they all scored 12 runs.
They did.
So the Giants win with 12 runs. The Cubs win. Not the Cubs. The Cardinals win with 12 runs, and the Mets win with 12 runs. So the Mets win 12-1 over the Marlins, as you mentioned. The Giants beat the Rockies 12-3. And then you have St. Louis beating Cincinnati Reds 12-5. So it's like, they all scored 12 runs. Obviously, if you're looking at the Giants because they played later in the night, you see that St. Louis wins. You see that New York wins. You almost have to win then because although you're not gaining any ground, you're not going to lose any.
Exactly, and pretty much every game is a must-win at this point for all 3 of these teams. And like I said in earlier shows, I'm surprised that the Giants are still in it this long, but they have kind of bounced back a little bit in a way. They did play the Padres over the weekend, which is a weaker opponent, and they played the Rockies this week before they have the 3-game series this week against the Dodgers. So every game is a must-win for all 3 of these teams. And it's tough for me to count any of these 3 teams out now.
We're here at the nitty gritty. You gotta expect this to go down until last day.
No, it is. It's going to go down to the final day, and I don't expect the Dodgers to back down in that Giants series either, because I know that the Dodgers won that division, but you're still playing for playoff seeding. And it is the Giants rivalry series, and I think it's at San Francisco for that matter.
Yes, yeah, the Giants are going to be the home team.
Okay, so lucky that the Giants have that for them, and that's going to be the most important series for the Giants this season. And the Dodgers are not going to back down.
Yeah, you got to think the Dodgers definitely want to spoil the Giants' playoff party.
Do.
So they, like you said, being the rival, being a divisional foe. They definitely want to be that team to ruin the Giants' chances of getting into the playoffs. So they're not. It's not like the NFL where you might rest your quarterback week 16, week 17 if you have a playoff spot already locked up. They're going to be going for blood. They're going to be going to eliminate the Giants.
Yeah, and I know them Dodger fans would love to hear or see their team eliminate the Giants from the playoffs. I know they would love that. But moving on to these New York Mets and St. Louis Cardinals. The Cardinals, it is tough for me to talk about these teams also, It's like you don't know who is the hands-down favorite right now. And I know Ben and I had the Mets and Cardinals as the hands-down favorite to win the 2 wildcard spots, and you can't really say that anymore because any of these 3 teams could either make it or miss it.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, we talked about last week how we kind of felt like the Giants would sort of falter, and they haven't. They have kind of come back in a way. You have Johnny Cueto making his start tomorrow, so he's definitely still healthy. He's not going to the DL or anything.
Matt Moore pitched a good game last night.
Right, so we'll have to see if Cueto is not necessarily forcing himself back and is actually going to be the Cueto that you've seen this season, which in my opinion has been the most consistent pitcher for the Giants. For me, I think if there's going to be a team that's going to miss out, I realize they currently have the best record of the 3 right now, but I think it's probably going to be the Mets. The Mets have just battled injuries all year long. Look at the pitching staff. You have Steven Matz, Jacob deGrom all out. Noah Syndergaard pitched last night, so he probably won't have another start for the rest of the season. So you don't have your ace going on the mound anymore where you'd expect a guaranteed win. So I think that goes against them. I think that's what could hurt them.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you on that point. But moving on to the American League wildcard race, there are a lot more teams are in it. You got the Toronto Blue Jays leading at the first spot, and
they have a pretty solid lead too. You got to think they're going to lock down one of these spots.
Yeah, And the Baltimore Orioles, they are the second in the league for the second wild card spot. And behind them is the Detroit Tigers that are 1 game back. Seattle Mariners, 2 games back. And Houston Astros, 2.5 back. I'm actually still counting the Astros because they're 2.5 back. That is pretty reasonable games to be behind with a limited amount of games left. But I do see, looking at this teams right here, the Toronto Blue Jays, I do think they're going to make it. But I can't bet against the Baltimore Orioles as well. They have a really great lineup.
Yeah, Toronto has a 2-game lead over Baltimore right now for a wild card spot. So you have to expect, unless they falter in their last series of the year, they're going to be okay. It looks like Boston's magic number to clinch is only 1. We're going to be talking about them in our next segment. They've had a pretty solid week and a half. So, but yeah, I do think Toronto's guaranteed 1. You have Baltimore, you have Detroit, you have Seattle. At one point earlier in the week, you had Detroit pass up Baltimore for that second wild card spot. So they're still right in the thick of it as well. Baltimore's kind of struggled recently. I realized they just had a series against the Red Sox, who, going into last night's game, although they did lose, they had an 11-game winning streak. So they ended up getting swept by the Red Sox. So you do have a little bit of room to falter there, which you can't do at this part of the season. But you mentioned their lineup is still really solid. I don't know, man. Something tells me I want to go with the Tigers. I don't know why.
Some tells me I want to go with them too, but I just feel that the Orioles are just the better team.
I think the Orioles are a better team.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to look at the team who's playing better at the right time.
Don't get me wrong. Tigers,
that's why I want to say Tigers.
Don't get me wrong. Tigers are playing really good baseball right now, but I just feel the Orioles, they just have enough to get there. That's all it takes is to make it into the tournament. That's all you need.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Look at the Giants. They seem to always win it when they're a wild card team. So.
And they might be a wild card team again. So
it's possible. I mean, they currently, if the season ended today, they would be there. So
they would be there.
The races are getting really tight, and then we have next week we have playoffs. So we're gonna figure out what all these teams are made of here in these last few games, these last series here. It's gonna be really important. You know, every single game is a must-win from now on. So you got to put your best effort right ahead of you.
Way to say it, Ben. All
right. I try, buddy.
All right.
With that being said, we'll take our last break here. We're going to be talking about the Chicago Cubs, the first team in baseball to win 100 games, and probably the only team this year, unless something miraculous happens. And we're also going to be talking about the Boston Red Sox, as I mentioned, going into last night's game against the Yankees. Although they did lose, they had an 11-game winning streak. They're playing lights out, and they look like they will be taking home the AL East, which has been tight all year. So, with that being said, we'll take our last break here at the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, and we're going to be talking about some teams that look like they're about to make a deep postseason run, and most notably the Chicago Cubs becoming the first and probably the only team in baseball this year to win 100 games, and they did win 101 last night. And I think, Ben, you agree with me that Cubs are practically the best team in baseball.
Definitely, at least through you've seen the season. In a series, it doesn't always go that way. Yeah. You know, you have pitching heating up, you have people just going through slumps, so we'll have to wait and see. I think if there's one thing going against the Cubs, it's their curse that they haven't won in over 100 years. The Billy Goat, Steve Bartman, whatever you want to call it. But that's the one knock on the Cubs this year, is that they just haven't really done it in so long. Who knows if they can. Obviously, Boston Red Sox broke their curse when they won the World Series. So anything's possible. Yeah, the Cubs, they're playing lights out. 101-56 now. That's crazy.
That is crazy. That I have not seen a record like that in a while. But the Cubs, the first and only probably 100-win team, I remember earlier in the season, their bullpen was not up to par. It was not. The reason why people didn't talk about their bullpen so much is because their offense scores so many runs. They finally got hope in the bullpen. They got Aroldis Chapman there to be the closer, who has been lights out as their closer. And they had a little slump there in mid-July, probably in June too. So they got over that. But, man, they overcame it, and they are the best team. And that's all I can say is, like, you cannot say anything but good things about the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah, if there's one thing to sort of look on here with 100 wins, this is the 6th time in franchise history the Cubs have won 100 games, and the first time since 1935. So quite a while away.
It's been a while, yeah.
And in 4 of those 5 seasons, they went on to the World Series. Not necessarily winning it, but went into the World Series. So they do have some history going in their favor. So we'll have to wait and see. Definitely going to be facing the winner of the wild card game, locking up the best record in baseball. So looking at either the Cardinals, a team they're very familiar with, a division foe, and then the Mets or the Giants. So we'll have to wait and see how they do next week in their first game.
Yeah, and the thing that you brought attention to was how this team is going to do in the 7-game series. And don't get me wrong, a 7-game series worries me about any team. Because you remember, we talked about the Giants in the last segment. If the Giants happen to win that wild card game, and they have to play the Cubs, you can't really count the Giants off because of the history of that team. Even though they are going to play the Cubs, you can't write them off right there. And the Mets, they do have a little bit of injury history this year, so maybe the Cubs can win that series. The Cardinals, though, you can't be so sure about that one because that is a divisional rival and probably one of the best ones.
That's what I was going to say. I think if one team was to give them a hard time, I think on paper you have to say the Giants because they can match up in a series. You can match up a pitching matchups will match up really well. But as a whole, I'd probably say the Cardinals because they know them so well. You know what I mean? They play in the same division as them. They play them all the time. They know them so well. They can maybe figure out a way to kind of beat them where no one has all year long.
Yeah, and you do know one other team that could make it to the World Series is Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, the Boston Red Sox over on the American League side are playing on fire right now. Going into last night's game against the Yankees, although they did lose 6-4, they had won 11 straight, so they were going for 12. Had they have won that game, they would have clinched the division, but their magic number still sits at 1, so it's really just a matter of time unless Toronto wins every single game and the Red Sox lose every single game from here on out, which I don't see happening.
Which it could happen, but it's not going to.
If that happened, that would probably be the biggest storyline within these last couple of weeks in baseball. The only thing I can compare it to is when the Rangers had their fold a couple of years ago and the A's came back and won the division. That wasn't necessarily in the last week. That was kind of in the last couple of months. But still, this would be like the biggest letdown in a long time.
Oh, it will. And I don't think it's going to happen. I just want to say it could, but it's not likely. And the Red Sox, do you think they're the best team in the American League? I honestly think they're up there. It's tough to say. It's tough to say because I think the American League is a little more balanced than the National League is.
I think they have the best hitting. I'll say that.
That is true. I agree with that.
And in playoffs, what wins is pitching. So you have the Red Sox bats. They're unbelievable. Top of the order to the bottom. We know about them. We've talked about them before. So I think, if anything, it's going to have to be their pitching that can carry them. When I look at the Red Sox, I really only see 2 pitchers who I feel like could actually do something for them. And that's Rick Porcello and that's David Price. Now, both guys don't have the lowest of ERAs, but because they're getting so much run support, they're winning a lot of games. The thing in the playoffs is going to be, can the Red Sox hit like they did in the regular season? Because if they can, at least to some proportion, I think they're probably at least going to win their first round matchup. And I think it's going to come down between the Red Sox and Texas. And I think Texas maybe has a little more pitching, while the Red Sox have maybe a little more hitting. So we'll have to figure out something's got to give.
Yeah,
but the Red Sox are playing great at the right time.
Yeah, they are. And I do think the Rangers are more likely to contend for the American League pennant, basically because they have a little more pitching than the Red Sox do. And the Red Sox do have Price and Purcell, who you said. They also had Drew Pomeranz, who they brought up for San Diego. He didn't really look like the same guy that he was in San Diego earlier this year. Maybe that's because he's in the National League and in a pitcher's park. And then they had Eduardo Rodriguez, who struggled since coming back to the majors this year. So the Rangers do have a little bit more pitching. They do have Cole Hamels. They're probably going to have Yu Darvish back in time. They got Kobe Lewis coming back. And then the lineup just as good, if not maybe better, than the Red Sox is.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be something that we're going to have to obviously monitor come playoff time because both teams have already clinched a playoff spot. So with that being said, I want to end the show on one thing.
What?
I want to know, did you see this last night the Red Sox and Yankees game? Did you see this?
I did not see this.
Okay. So you might have missed this, but there was a couple out in the outfield, and the guy does your typical proposal at a game, which I don't have any issue with. That's great. But as he goes to pull the ring out of his pocket, he drops the ring, or he either dropped it or it like came out of the box or whatever. Okay. So he's like looking on the ground trying to find it. And he has that look on his face like, oh my God, like I need to find this thing right now. Like someone just stole his like lunch money. Okay. So he's trying to find this ring and then it's on the Jumbotron and everything. So people around him are looking, and then like an usher finally spots the ring. It fell into his girlfriend's pants cuff. She was wearing, it looked like bell bottoms, I swear. So she had her pants cuffed a little bit. And it fell inside that cuffling of her pants. So it's finally spotted. And then obviously he proposes and she says yes and everything. But this went from a great moment to, oh my God, back to a great moment. And it was really funny.
I did not see that. That was awesome.
And then the one thing I was thinking about is, you go through all this, and then what if she said no?
Oh man. Wow, that guy would have to feel really bad about himself. Man, how you gonna lose a ring, man? Oh, he almost lost it. He almost lost it.
Came out of the box and fell. And you gotta imagine a million people around you, a small ring.
Not only that, I don't know if they show it on TV, but I'm pretty sure they show that as well.
But it fell into her pant link, her cuff link on her pants. Like what are the chances of that? Obviously, congratulations to the happy couple now engaged. But I thought that was pretty funny last night.
Thank you for bringing that to the end of the show, because we started the show on a very somber note and then we ended on a good note.
Yeah, it was definitely really funny. And with that being said, we are going to end the show, as Jeremiah mentioned. But next week, I think, is definitely one of our most anticipated episodes because we're going to be talking playoffs.
Oh, playoffs?
Playoffs, yes. We're talking playoffs.
I love the football reference on the baseball show.
We're talking about playoffs. We're going to have matchups to break down. We're going to have games that night, wild card games. It's going to be a great, great show. Yeah,
we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here, and we're getting down to the most exciting time of the season. That is October.
Yes, we're almost there. This weekend will be October. So our next show will be October. This is the last show of September. So with that being said, guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode. To hear all the other episodes, you can go on to gsmcpodcast.com. You can click on the baseball portfolio and hear all 28 prior episodes. This is episode 29. You can also find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Play, as well as Twitter and Instagram. It's at @GSMC_baseball. And if you don't like any of those sources, you can find us on YouTube as well as Facebook.
Yes.
All right, guys. So that's gonna what's up?
And it's free $99.
It is free $99. It doesn't cost literally a dime to listen or subscribe on any of those platforms. So make sure you do that. So with that being said, guys, I'm Ben.
And I'm Jeremiah.
And we are out of here.